Hey guys, Dr. Rob here today, and I want to welcome you to another one of my whiteboard sessions where today we are going to talk about the 3 stages of adrenal fatigue. So that way you can identify for yourself what stage of adrenal fatigue you think you're in, because there's 3 stages. So for starters, we have to understand a little bit about the adrenal hormones and how they work. So just hang with me here, persevere, pay full attention to this part because it's important. So we have our adrenal glands here. This is my beautiful drawing of the adrenals. They make this hormone. I call it a master hormone. It's called pregnenolone. I call it a master hormone because it gets converted into other hormones. So pregnenolone gets converted into progesterone. Progesterone gets converted down here into cortisol. Pregnenolone could also get converted into DHEA, which converts into 7-keto-DHEA, which is a fat-burning hormone. DHEA also gets converted into estrogen and testosterone. So we got the graph, right? It's like the adrenal glands make this hormone pregnenolone, and then pregnenolone can go to either this side of the graph or this side of the graph. When the adrenals are healthy, when they're not fatigued, we have a good balance. There's actually a good ratio. It's about a 5-to-1 cortisol to DHEA ratio. So your body makes about 5 times more cortisol than DHEA. That's normal. When you're like that, there's usually healthy fat burning that's going on. Your energy's good, your sleep's good, everything is cool. So what happens in stage 1? Well, in stage 1, that's where this graph starts to have problems. In stage 1, cortisol goes high. DHEA, estrogen, testosterone, 7-keto, these guys on this side of the graph are normal. It's here. The cortisol gets elevated in stage 1. Now, why? Why does cortisol get elevated? Well, we have to remember from previous videos, if you've seen them, cortisol is the main anti-inflammatory hormone in your body. So if there's something in your body producing inflammation, parasite, yeast, bacteria, fungus, mold, toxin, heavy metal, whatever, that starts to drive your cortisol up. It's the chronic inflammation that drives cortisol up. It's not I sprained my ankle today. It's also not short-term stress that drives cortisol up. I found about 80%, 70 to 80% of the time, there's a chronic source of inflammation in the body. Often it's coming from the gut. So let's talk about what happens here. When cortisol gets elevated, there's some things it starts to do. The first thing it starts to do is cortisol, high cortisol, interferes with thyroid function. It interferes with, I'll just say it interferes with thyroid function. When you start to interfere with thyroid function, you can get thyroid symptoms, hair loss, loss of the outer 1/3 or 1/4 of your eyebrow, weight gain all over, fatigue, depression, cravings for carbohydrates, nails become weak or rigid, or like these little ridged vertical lines in them. So you can start to have problems with your thyroid when cortisol goes high. Other things you could have problems with, the hippocampus in your brain. Too much cortisol starts to damage the hippocampus. The reason why that's a problem is because the hippocampus is where your buttons are stored. And what I mean by buttons are, you ever push someone's button and then they explode, right? You call it like triggering. Well, that's where all your triggers are stored. That's where all your buttons are stored. And when that guy starts to break down, man, you got buttons and triggers flying all over the place, which means your fuse becomes much shorter. You're more likely to get irritable, yell at your spouse, yell at your family, do those things or act in those ways that you really don't want to. The other thing that happens is cortisol starts to make us store belly fat. It increases our levels of anxiety, and it starts to have a negative impact on our sleep. So we start to, like maybe we can fall asleep okay, but we wake up around 2 or 3 in the morning and have difficulty falling back to sleep, right? So this is all the stuff that starts to happen with elevated cortisol. But now what occurs? What occurs? That's stage 1. Stage 1 is elevated cortisol, other hormones are normal. Stage 2, what starts to happen is this. The adrenals now are fatiguing, right? The adrenals can only keep elevated cortisol going so long until they start to fatigue. So they start to have to borrow from Peter to pay Paul. What I mean by that is, remember, pregnenolone can go on this side of the graph and get converted into DHEA, things that help you burn fat, or it's going to go over here to this side of the graph. When your body is demanding more cortisol because there's some inflammation that's present in it, your adrenals have no choice. They steal the pregnenolone. They steal the pregnenolone that you would normally use to make things like DHEA. They steal it away. Let me get a red marker. They steal the pregnenolone away from being DHEA, and instead, we make more cortisol. So we're stealing the pregnenolone away from being DHEA to make more cortisol. So what does that mean? That means in stage 2 adrenal fatigue, our cortisol actually starts to level out. It starts to become normal. But things like DHEA start to fall. Estrogen can start to fall. Testosterone. What does that mean? Well, when DHEA starts to fall, we start to become fatigued. We can become also more irritable. We can become depressed. We can gain more weight around the midsection because we're losing our fat burning hormone, right? It's bad enough in stage 1, we got the cortisol kicking and that caused us to gain weight. Well, now we have all this belly fat because of the high cortisol and we can't get rid of it because now our DHEA levels are low, so we can't burn the belly fat and we can't get rid of it. So worse, what can start to happen as stage 2 starts to progress, cortisol still stays normal, right? Because the body has to have that cortisol to fight the inflammation. But the DHEA continues to drop. And it continues to drop. And when it starts to continue to drop, testosterone and estrogen can continue to drop. And what that means when testosterone gets low, that means more body fat. It means for women, a lowered sex drive and just kind of like a melancholy type feeling. When estrogen starts to drop, we now start to look at like perimenopausal symptoms, right? More depression, more anxiety, more problems with sleep, hot flashes, night sweats, all of those things that start to happen when this starts to fall. So here's a tip for you. Many women think they are going into perimenopause because they start having these problems. And what they really have is not perimenopause. They have stage 2 adrenal fatigue. That's what's happening. Their cortisol is normal, but their DHEA is falling, right? In a healthy woman, your adrenal glands will actually make a third of the progesterone, which is, one of the female hormones. So the adrenals play a huge role in estrogen production and in progesterone production. So if you think you're perimenopausal, you might be, but you also might really just be in stage 2 adrenal fatigue. All right, so now what starts to happen? Estrogen's falling, DHEA's falling, testosterone's falling. The person's feeling tired, they have belly fat, they're not sleeping well, they're anxious, maybe depressed, their fuse is shorter, they're irritable, they have brain fog, they can't get their work done as well. They push through their day in stage 2. They push and push and push and push until the inevitable happens, stage 3. So what's occurring in stage 3? Well, in stage 3, all of these guys start to fall. I'm actually going to move this down. In stage 3, all of these guys start to fall. So now what happens is the adrenals have gotten so weak, they can no longer keep up the cortisol production. They just can't do it. So the cortisol starts to fall. But on top of that, the DHEA is low, the estrogen is low, the testosterone is low. We have this cascade of hormonal depletion that occurs, one after the other after the other. At this point in time, the person now starts to feel like this. They are completely exhausted. They don't want to get out of bed. It's hard for them to function. Their brain doesn't work. They can't tolerate loud noises. They can't tolerate too much activity or stress. It weakens them, If you try to get them, like if a lot of people come over the house and they're noisy and there's kids running around, it could send them into an event. They got to get to a bedroom, they have to sleep, they have to rest. These people in stage 3 adrenal fatigue, when all the hormones have failed, they really need quiet, they need calm, they need to handle the source of inflammation in their body, correct that, and then start to rebuild and repair the adrenals. That's what really needs to happen in stage 3. Because in stage 3, they're exhausted, they can't tolerate stress at all. Any stresses. It could be kids being loud, TV being loud, too loud noises. Often they don't like to go places, like they can almost become agoraphobic and it's not really that they're agoraphobic, they're not really afraid of open spaces and things like that. What they're afraid of is they know their body is now failing them, meaning they can't keep their obligations in life. When they want to go do something, their body's like, yeah, we're not going to cooperate today. So they can be out in public and start to feel anxious and start to feel weak, and they just want to get home. So then, out of survival for self, they start to develop these phobias of going out and going places because their body is, it's toast. Their adrenals are toast. We've worked with over 20,000 patients over the last 21 years in practice. So we've worked with a lot of people. I've seen a lot of stage 3 adrenal fatigue, and it can be pretty rough on those people. So in any event, I hope you enjoyed this information today. I hope you found value in it, as that's my purpose. If you did, please subscribe to the channel. Please share it with a friend. And look, if you have a health or weight problem or you're stuck in adrenal fatigue, you don't have to be. I've made this is what I do. This is what my clinic has done for a really long time, is help identify the underlying causes of people's health and weight problems. So if you have a health problem, if you have a weight problem, please reach out to me and I would love, love, love to help you. I'll put a link down here where you can fill out my free adrenal damage test, which will help us get more information as to how beat up and damaged your adrenals really are. And I'll even give you a free consultation with either my naturopath or my certified health coach. My naturopath is my wife. Pam, she's been in practice with me for 21 years. Yeah, side by side. So again, I hope you enjoyed that video. Go fill out the adrenal damage test, and I look forward to seeing you and helping you soon. See ya. Bye.